Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing another movie review, and by the title of the video you can already tell that is going to be Creed 3. This was a movie that I went in highly anticipating because I loved Creed 2 so much. Actually one of my favorite in the whole Rocky Creed series. And so we're going to talk about what I thought about Creed 3. Did I like it? Did I hate it? How did I feel about it? The mixed, everything in between. But before we do that, if you guys are new here, consider hitting that subscribe button, letting me know that you guys like the content that I am putting out. And without further ado, let's get into the review. So starting off with one of my favorite characters in the whole movie, gotta go with Damien. He was fantastic from beginning to end. And that's, you know, mostly due to the part of Jonathan Majors. I would say all due to the part of Jonathan Majors, because he just absolutely kills almost every role that he is in. And I just absolutely loved him in this role. You know, seeing him with the, you know, having the little backstory with Creed. And then when him and Adonis meet, modern day, you can tell he's not telling him everything right from the get-go. He's very soft-spoken, he doesn't say a lot of words, but the words that he does say are meaningful. So he already immediately had my attention, and you get these little sprinkles of how bad he really wants the title, and you start to see that he's really not going to give it up for anything. He really doesn't have any sort of understanding that he won't have the title. That idea of him not having the title does not exist to him. He will have the title. And that just makes him such a great setup villain for this movie. As you keep going along, he gets more and more progressively violent, you know, even at the gym. And then, you know, Creed's trying to vouch for him, but he's also trying to, you know, maintain his sense of professionalism in the gym that he owns. And I absolutely love what they did with his character in this movie. Moving on to AMARA Creed. Obviously she was in Creed 2 just as a baby, as they had just had her in that movie. Getting to see her interact with everyone was such a good element to this movie. It kind of, I wouldn't say it took the focus off of the boxing, but it kind of like infused itself within the main plot. You know, them having to, you know, of course learn the sign language, which I don't think they knew in the first movie, or in the second movie when they first had her. So that's something they totally had to learn. And then getting to see her interact with, you know, deal with how famous her dad is, and then interacting with the new people that she meets, and just seeing how much not only she loves her dad, but how much she wants to be like him. And then she has the problems at school with the fighting, and it just becomes a really cool infused conflict with the conflict that's already going on between Damien and Adonis. I did love the actress who played her. I thought she was great. If they do decide to make Creed 4, I would love to see more of her in that movie. So I want to go into some internal conflict kind of stuff here. One of my favorite things about this movie, probably one of the biggest conflict parts of this movie, was Adonis not wanting to say anything about his and Damien's past. And, you know, from the moment he saw Damien, he's just like, oh, I really don't want to talk about what happened between us, because he had that feeling of guilt. And he didn't want his family to see him like that. And, you know, the whole movie they're building up, and he doesn't want to talk about it, and he just keeps pushing them away. But when his mom dies, he finally decides that it's not worth pushing people away, and he finally gives in and talks about it. And I loved that sense of him and Bianca finally talking about it right before the big fight. It had such a good emotional weight to go into the final fight with. I absolutely loved that they did that right before, which obviously you kind of expected, but it still really hit well. Kind of going back a little bit with Damien, you know, getting to see all these little things with him between when he's at his apartment. I love the little details that they did between with Damien, especially like when he's at his apartment working out, and you can see that he, you know, did not come from big beginnings. And, you know, he's in this small LA apartment, and he's just he's using what he can to train. You know, he's got the photos in the mirror, looking at himself, making sure that his punches are right. I absolutely just love that feeling of almost desperatism. I don't know if that's a word, desperatism. And just seeing him really just want it. He did not care what it takes. And I think at one point he even starts like punching the wall, and just that inner conflict within him, you can see that just in the way that he does things when he's by himself. And I love experiencing that they showed that, and they didn't just cut off at any of those moments. Moving a little forward to the end of the movie, one of my favorite things that they did with this movie was with the final fight. There was a segment, it lasted about 2-ish, 3 minutes, maybe even 5, where it was just him and Adonis going at each other, but they were like not in a real space, if that makes sense. Like, they were in the boxing ring, but it was almost like that, like they were seeing each other when they were young, and then when they were fighting, there was like prison bars coming down, and just that symbolism of for Damien, this was either a do or die situation. If he didn't make it here, then he felt like he had no purpose, and that he would start getting into violence again, and then maybe even go back to prison. And you know, not only that, but he had been training so much time that all he ever really knew was prison, besides when he was younger. And he finally had this chance to prove himself as the top dog. And I absolutely love that part. You know, they didn't really care about the crowd, the event. This was between him and Adonis. And that just really, for me, made it really personal and really well done. Kind of going into that a little more, so as much as I did love the fight, as you guys know, I'm a really big fan of Creed 2 with Viktor DRAGO and his dad Ivan. I will say I did enjoy Creed 2 just a tad more than Creed 3, only because I just felt like the whole Ivan and Viktor plotline with Adonis, especially how close that hits to home, and then, you know, the little infusion of his dad and with Rocky in there, I just thought that was just a tad more better than this story, but not by much, because I still really enjoyed seeing like Damien, and this is more of a Creed thing more than it was with his dad. So kind of going into what I was just talking about, I love that we got to see Viktor DRAGO again, this time more as like a friend to Adonis, and, you know, even helping him train. I just thought that was such a cool concept that they could turn, you know, the main villain from the second movie, kind of like what they did with Rocky 2, where Apollo was the main villain of Creed 2, or I guess you could say opponent of Creed 2, or of Rocky 2. And then in Rocky 3, they kind of made him the helper, whereas in Creed 3, they quite literally did the same thing. And I just thought that was a really cool, I don't know if they did that on purpose to kind of like mirror the original Rocky, but I thought that was a really cool thing that they did, and I'm really very glad that they did that. One thing I do want to quick touch on, there's not too much to say, but I did enjoy seeing Mary again, of course, Creed's mom. She was great, she was a great emotional support. Her and Bianca were fantastic. I loved seeing especially the way that they all interacted as a family after Adonis had won. I did kind of like the whole thing with her trying to keep Damien away, and that she hadn't given him the letters, and that him and his mom had that internal conflict where he was mad at her for not giving them to her, and thus causing Damien to be so upset with Adonis because he never reached out, didn't get his letters or anything. So I thought she was great. I loved Bianca. I thought, you know, we really got to, you know, one small step deeper with her, and feeling, you know, getting to see how she felt with having to, because she's a producer now and she doesn't necessarily do all these concerts like she did in the first Creed because of her hearing. And I just think that's such good character development, especially the way that it's talked about in the movie, how, you know, it still bothers her, but she's learning to live through it. Final thing I do want to talk about, it's the big elephant in the room, kind of. This is the first Rocky / Creed film without Rocky Balboa. I know that there was some conflict, not with Michael B. Jordan or Ryan Coogler or anything like that, but I think it was someone who bought the rights, and I know that there was kind of some conflict going on there. I know Sylvester Stallone did say in an interview that he would come back if there were for Creed 4. As for how I think the movie was without him, I think that we didn't need to maybe physically see him. Maybe at the final fight, or maybe even just a simple conversation between the two. Or even just like a mention of him. But I don't think necessarily that this movie would have worked as well with Rocky. I just don't think that it quite needed him as much. Like, for example, Creed 1 and Creed 2 were movies that really revolved around the history of Adonis and his father, where, you know, Rocky was very heavily involved, where this was more of Creed's history, or Adonis's history. And so I think that was a really kind of good move, but again, I would have liked to see Rocky like kind of be there for him, at least in the final fight with him, like in the crowd or something. It would have been cool as a little call out to see him. And then especially see, like, if Damien would have seen that, that would have been like a cool little thing that they could have done. Overall, I thought this movie was great. Definitely a great installment into the Creed and Rocky franchise. And I gave it a 4 out of, I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 on my letterbox. And then I'll quick post my ranking right here of just what I think in general right now of the series. So let me know what you guys thought about the movie in the comments below. And if there's anything you'd like me to talk about with the Creed and Rocky franchise. But until then, guys, I'll see you later. Peace, everyone.